Cleveland, are you ready? A new chapter begins and a legend arrives. The Beard is here. Former MVP, scorer, playmaker, game changer, linking up with the next generation to chase the ultimate goal. This isn't just a debut, it's a warning to the league. The wait is over. James Harden, Cleveland Cavaliers, let's get to work. Welcome to another edition of the Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mac, and tonight our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Sacramento Kings. Obviously, I joke, I kid around, but seriously, half the damn team over there in Sacramento was out, in addition to the deadline transactions. No lie, entering this game, the Sacramento Kings ruled out Domantas Sabonis with lower back soreness, Zach LaVine with finger soreness, Keegan Murray with a left ankle sprain, Malik Monk, who had an illness, and DeAndre Hunter, who is having a rough go of it this season. Former Cavalier, obviously, that was moved in that deadline deal. He is out with a left eye iritis. For those of you who did not watch last night's game featuring Sacramento, I think he got scratched in the eye, something serious. So prayers up for him. Hopefully he'll feel better in the next couple of days, but he was not out there tonight. Hence the Stockton Kings joke. Either way, if I'm being honest, I was kind of happy for that to be the case, as this team was going to need to suffer through the obligatory adjustment period that these types of moves tend to mandate and necessitate. And that's just kind of how it felt right out of the gate, as Harden was understandably trying to get a feel for his new comrades. I had a few observations in the early going, but before we dig into those, do your boy a favor and smash that like button. Subscribe to get the NBA content coming. Hit that notification bell so you stay locked in all season. So let's dive in. So as I mentioned, I had a few takeaways early on. Not rocket science. Most of you probably picked up on these as well. Number one, I think there was a bit of nervous energy flowing right after the tip-off. You could see it with Donovan Mitchell and others. Jarrett Allen will likely be involved a lot more from possession to possession as Harden leverages his on-ball gravity, and you saw that from the tip-off. Jarrett Allen was extremely involved from possession to possession. And James Harden gets into the paint at will. He will up the points in the paint being scored for this team, obviously, with his prowess out there, being able to put pressure on the rim. All that said, it was unsurprisingly a little wonky, a little sloppy out of the gate. And as I suppose that isn't helped by who isn't out there right now. Let's just get the obligatory out of the way. Max Strus has been out all season long, but it's the absences of Dean Wade and Evan Mobley that were felt at points in the early going. And you have to keep in mind that without DeAndre Hunter, Dean Wade, and Evan Mobley, you don't really have a lot of size on your side in the in the tanks. You are leaning heavily on that of Jarrett Allen, Naquan Tomlin, and Thomas Bryant to help make up for that. And to that point, Kenny Atkinson elected to roll out a starting five of James Harden, Donovan Mitchell, Sam Merrill at the 3, Jalen Tyson at the 4, and Jarrett Allen at the 5, of course. The 3 J's. James, Jalen, Jarrett, right? I didn't love it, to be honest with you, at least the choice to start those 5 together. But there aren't a lot of options, obviously. So you could have started Naquan in place of Tyson and Tyson in place of Merrill. But considering the opposing team, at least entering this game, I wasn't overly concerned. I think Kenny was just trying to see what he could put together out there. And obviously, right out of the gate, the shot making was a little flat in the first. Cleveland picked it up in the second, going on a 15-2 run to open the second frame. But that was filled to the brim with defensive intensity, which I love to see. There were heavily contested shots, turnovers, and blocks. And speaking of blocks, my Keon Ellis is a fucking dog out there, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Keon Ellis had, I think it was a chase down block. I'll call it a chase down block. It's Cleveland, right? We know what chase downs are like. He had a chase down block that was turned into points down on the other end. He would follow that up with multiple trays. He is going to be so damn valuable for this team. We know how impactful he can be as a point of attack defender. But if I'm being honest with you guys, it's truly the two-way play, the abilities on both sides of the ball, not just the defensive side at the point of attack or as a disruptor or a chaos agent. It's not just the shot making out on the perimeter. It is both coupled together that has me feeling really great about his fit here in Cleveland. He is a legitimate floor spacing presence. And the Cavaliers, and get it, maybe I'm going to oversell this a little bit, and it's just the pure emotions running through me because it is 12:34 a.m. as of recording this where I am at. It's late as fuck. Maybe I'm a little too emotional right now, but when I see Keon, I think to myself, right, the Cavs have not quite had a true 3-and-D presence out there that could reliably knock down shots. No disrespect to high school Okoro. Since maybe since J.R. Smith. And maybe, again, maybe I'm a little too high on JR's defensive chops, but man, he was a two-way player for those Cavs teams at the height of his Cleveland powers. I mean, not exactly the same type of players. Obviously, J.R. Smith was way different from an archetype than that of Keon Ellis, but some of the impact is the same, if you understand what I'm trying to say. But it wasn't just Keon who was putting in work, right? Dennis Schroeder was doing much the same, getting to the paint at will, drawing and ones, finding the open man for easy buckets. Thomas Bryant was out there drilling trays. Naquan Tomlin brought some early energy, getting out in transition as much as possible. Craig Porter Jr. was a connective piece out there, getting passes from James Harden at times and rerouting them to Jarrett Allen and Jalen Tyson at times. And speaking of Jalen Tyson, I thought at least in the early going of this game, he did okay. I know the field goal percentages are not going to speak to that, but I thought from a defensive standpoint, he did okay considering the circumstances. This is a 6'5", 6'6" wing that we're asking to play up a position. It's a spot where he did that a lot last year, sporadically at the power forward positions on some nights. And again, it's not ideal, but I think that he can reasonably do well if you're not overextending him there. It wasn't the best performance from him. He was just 3 of 8 from the field, didn't knock down a three after going, I think, 8 of 8 over his last 2 games from 3-point distance. And I know the plus minus is not going to look great for him. He was a minus 27 out there on that court, worst on the floor for the Cavs. But I thought for what you asked him to do, he tried his best. The game itself was pretty solid for the Cavaliers up until about the 3:30 mark in the second frame. That's when Sactown went on a 9-2 run to cut the lead to 2 after the Cavs had been up by the score of 54-46. Just a rough way to end the half. Still, there are some encouraging signs to look forward to. Perhaps chief among those was the involvement offensively from one Jarrett Allen, who was a perfect 7 of 7 from the field up to that point, leading the team through 2 quarters. I loved what I saw out of Jarrett Allen in the early going. This is definitely something that I thought was going to be the case, right? I mentioned numerous times entering this game, I thought to myself that Jarrett Allen stands to benefit from the presence of James Harden in particular, especially without Evan Mobley out there and the Cavaliers not having a ton of front court options to roll out there. And considering the work that James Harden has on his resume in terms of elevating the bigs, right? In his past, Clint Capella turned into a rotational mainstay in Houston. He got Ivica Zubac paid big bucks over in LA and before he headed and was traded over to Indiana, obviously, during the deadline. The point is, James Harden has long since had a reputation for elevating the bigs around him. And that was no different tonight as Jarrett Allen ate for much of this night. He would finish tonight with 29 points and 10 rebounds, another double-double for him on an extremely efficient 11 of 12 from the field. That's 91.7%, including 7 of 8 from the charity stripe. So he knocked down his freebies. 7 of 8 out there. 87.5% is pretty damn good for Jarrett Allen. All of that being the case, the Cavs still had to close this one out against a very pesky and undermanned Kings team. And let me tell you, that was not going to be easy by any stretch of the imagination. The Kings continued their assault on the glass and on the interior, right? Donovan Mitchell, got to give Donovan Mitchell a ton of credit. He kicked things off with back-to-back spider shakes, the signature move with the high and gather that he has often put on display for the Cleveland masses. It's just a pretty damn awesome thing to see from a aesthetics standpoint. We all know Donovan Mitchell plays some of the most aesthetically pleasing basketball that you can see in the NBA on a game-to-game basis. But again, Sacramento was not backing down. So much of that had to do with the leadership and shot making for most of the game from Russell Westbrook, who was 8 of 10 from the field, including 5 of 6 from three-point range up to that point in the game. And you also have to throw a lot of credit at the likes of Anik Clifford. Anik Clifford was flat out phenomenal in this game, if you're asking me. Neek would finish with 30 points. He led the way for Sacramento tonight on 12 of 19 from the field, including a blistering 5 of 9 from three-point distance. That is 55.6%. You got to give all credit where it's due because he was knocking down a ton of shots in very important key stretches of the game. Same can be said for the likes of Daquan Plowden, if I'm not mistaken, after the Cavaliers tied the game up after a Donovan Mitchell and one, he ended up knocking down a triple to put the Sacramento Kings up 107-104. And at that point, I'm like, oh, man, are they going to ruin one James Harden's debut in the white and gold? And I'm glad that it did not end up going that way. And I'm trying to paint a portrait here of a very competitive, despite undermanned Sacramento team. I'm trying to give them the respect that they deserve, because oftentimes, even though coming into a matchup that you have the superior talent and you should not struggle against a team like this, it's often when things become the most dangerous, because this is when we start to approach trap game territory. We know the Cavaliers are dealing with a couple of things on their end in regards to injuries, and they're trying to debut a very big piece, that being James Harden. So, to be honest with you, I walked into this one not necessarily feeling like they were going to be stomped out by any stretch of the imagination. Them being the Sacramento Kings, I honestly was a little antsy about this one, because sometimes these debuts have a certain way of going off the rails because guys are just trying to get a feel for the surroundings around them. So, all of that being the case, I was really, really moved by what I saw at points. Obviously, it was not necessarily a game at which you can point to and say, "Oh man, this team is title contenders." You can't do that, because there were some pretty disappointing performances tonight, pretty off games. But to me, I look at what I saw and I was highly encouraged about a few particular aspects. I think the connection in the pick and roll and the dribble handoff between Jarrett Allen and James Harden is chief among them. That is something that I think every Cavaliers fan envisioned going into this game, knowing what he has done for the bigs. I think that the fit beside Donovan Mitchell and James Harden, I had a lot of questions entering this first game between the two of, okay, what is that going to look like? Is James Harden going to move off ball? Is Donovan Mitchell going to commit more to moving off the ball? Because traditionally, while they can operate that way, they just haven't. They're not great off-ball players, historically speaking. So I was very, very reserved. That's probably the wrong word. You guys, I had my reservations about the fit on the court between these two very high usage players. And I think they made it work at times. I think what you saw from James Harden in the early going of this game was that that he tried to play make, right? He tried to get others involved. You saw a number of passes to Jarrett Allen out of the pick and roll, some pocket passes, some over the top, some of the shit that we have seen from him in LA, hitting Ivica Zubac and John Collins and others. We saw him get the ball to Jalen Tyson a number of times as Tyson was cut into the basket, and himself being a pick and roll man. And that was nice to see. You saw a lot of connective tissue out there, some energy in terms of facilitation, starting from James Harden. And that was to be expected as he's trying to figure out where best to put these guys into their, where their best positions are out on that court. And I think that's going to be a work in progress, obviously, especially as you get Evan Mobley back and some of these other pieces out there, but I was encouraged by that. And Donovan Mitchell, you saw the Cavaliers lean on him heavily in the third quarter, and he made shots when he needed to, obviously, and it resulted in Donovan Mitchell finishing with a stat line of 35 points. This man is just consistently putting up 30 plus. It's not even it's not even funny anymore how often he does it. His official stat line would be 35 points, 2 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Crazy. 13 of 24 from the field. That is 54.2%. He was just 2 of 8 from 3-point distance. So not the most efficient game from him shooting from beyond the arc, but he made up for that in getting into the interior of the defense, drawing a ton of contact, finishing a perfect 7 of 7 from inside. From the charity stripe, and that's always nice to see. And speaking of that, before I put the graphic containing James Harden's entire stat line up, just in case you hadn't seen it already, the one thing going into this game that I was really happy about was the superstar whistle that we were going to be getting with James Harden. Right now, on the surface, you may look at James Harden's 4 free throw attempts. A guy who is 6th in the NBA in free throw attempts per game, entering tonight at 10.5, or I think like 10.5 or 10.8. And I had this statistic written down for the video I dropped on James Harden just the other day. But the point is, he took just 4 free throw attempts, the pair of those coming in the final moments of the game as Sacramento was forced to foul to try and come back in this one after the Cavaliers took the lead. Listen, ignore the pure free throw numbers. James Harden did not he drove into the paint a lot tonight, but he did not necessarily look to score a lot of the time when he decided to do so. It was mostly trying to facilitate. So I wouldn't necessarily chalk this up to, oh, he's in Cleveland now. He lost the superstar whistle. The name on the front of the jersey does not mean anything to the refs, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't that. It was simply that he didn't apply as much pressure as he had been doing with the Clippers, especially recently. Tonight, he looked to facilitate a hell of a lot more than he did to actually attack the interior of the defense. And when he did score the basketball, a good bulk of that came from beyond the arc, obviously. And with that being the case, James Harden, who scored his first official points from beyond the arc, by the way, that tells you a lot of what you need to know. This was James Harden's stat line in his Cleveland Cavaliers debut. 23 points, 2 rebounds, 8 assists, 1 steal. He was 7 of 13 from the field. That's 53.8%. He was 5 of 8 from 3-point distance. That is 62.5%. And he was a perfect 4 of 4 from the line. And this is why I say, listen, don't put a lot of stock into the free throw numbers themselves. Most of his scoring impact came from beyond the arc as he took the patented step back so much tonight. Listen, I put this out in the video. You guys already know. You guys already understand that that Harden is a player that has his bread and butter as a offensive talent, especially as a scorer, traditionally has been that step back triple. You know what's going to happen. It's a couple of dribbles between the legs, and before you can actually challenge it and get up, he's already taken that step back and just put the shot up, and it's in, right? We've already covered this season. James Harden has not had the most efficient year from range. He entered today just shooting 34.7% from deep, and he is just a career 36.2%. But when you consider the volume, this man takes in terms of 3-point shots, like, I'll take that all the live long day, because you know that the on-ball gravity that he generates and the off-ball gravity that he has, meaning that the defenders know that he is a huge threat to knock him down from 3-point distance. You got to send the defender his way. You have always had to. He's such a skilled offensive talent. And so to tie a bow on this, what I'm trying to say is that if you're concerned about the free throws, the sheer number of free throws he took tonight, you actually will have to watch this game. And I say that because people will look at these stat lines and they'll say, oh, he lost the superstar whistle. No, that's not the case. That's just not how he played tonight. And I think oftentimes when fans see these numbers, they just don't take into consideration the context that needs to be applied with them. So I thought this was a solid ass debut. Not perfect, not bad either. This is a very, very good 23-8. I will take that all the live long day. And I thought from a defensive standpoint, he wasn't necessarily, he's not great at the point of attack, but I do think that he is somebody that can rack up a ton of deflections. And you saw that, or you saw that in LA. You've seen that at various stops in his career. And he's somebody that can use his size, right? At 6'5, 6'6 or so, James Harden is not a small guard. So great debut, in my opinion. Not perfect, not terrible. Very, very solid debut for James Harden. I was very impressed by what I saw. Everything that I saw out there tonight, I was expecting from a facilitation standpoint. We already knew that he was going to get Jarrett Allen heavily involved. When Evan Mobley gets back, it'll be very similar, although Ev is not necessarily the caliber of screener and pick and roll action type of guy that that JA is. But I think that you're going to see an elevation between the front court thanks to James Harden. And this is again no disrespect to Darius Garland, who again formulated such a huge chemistry with Jarrett Allen in particular over the years those two were together. But Harden is a superior playmaking talent. So I think that we all came into this game expecting that. Now, other things that I think should be pointed out about this game. I think that obviously the Cavaliers are going to have to figure out what the hell they want to do in regards to this rotation as it relates to size. Obviously, you have a shit ton of guards. I mean, I posted the graphic the other day listing the number of guards that they have, and it's just crazy. It's crazy. You got a lot of guys who are interchangeable, a lot of guys that can play up a position or down a position if you need them to. But if you just reel them off on down the line, it's Donovan Mitchell, James Harden, obviously, Craig Porter Jr., Dennis Schroeder, Sam Merrill, who is interchangeable at the 2 and the 3, Max Strus, who can play the 2 and 3, Jalen Tyson, who can play, honestly, 2, 3, 4. You can even use him as a 1 at times, I suppose. Tyrese Proctor, who is probably never going to play a meaningful minute again this season. Keon Ellis, who can play the 2 and the 3 this year. You have so much depth, guys who are interchangeable. So I don't know what the fuck Kenny Atkinson is going to elect to do with the rotation because you have a ton of guards. You don't have a lot of size in your front court if you don't have Dean Wade available to you, which is a very, very real possibility during the stretch of a season, especially entering the playoffs, because I love my guy Dean, but he just can't stay healthy routinely. He was out with a left ankle sprain today. And when you don't have that working for you, you're forced to rely on Jarrett Allen even more and Naquan Tomlin, who is probably going to get converted here real soon. So some question marks for Kenny Atkinson. The rotations, by the sheer virtue of trying to see where certain guys work, because again, you're now incorporating 3 new pieces into your rotation. James Harden is your starting one of your starting guards in your backcourt. Keon Ellis should be a huge piece off the Cavalier bench. There are already some people out there calling on him to start. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I can understand why they might want that. And you have the likes of Dennis Schroeder, who is somebody that can put a lot of pressure on the rim, somebody who can create for themselves off the dribble and for others as a facilitator. And that's something within itself already to try and manage, let alone having to deal with trying to shuffle around on the rotation because of injuries. So when you really think about everything that the Cavaliers have to figure out, I mean, I could understand why the rotations look the way they did tonight, because you're trying to figure out what the hell is going to work for you. So I can understand that. I'm not going to be too down on Kenny Atkins for putting out who we did tonight. And that's really all that boils down to from a rotational standpoint. It wasn't a perfect game from Dennis tonight, just 3 of 9 from the field, including 0 of 4 from 3-point distance. But I legitimately thought the rim pressure that he provided was as important as it was in his debut. He was a plus 22 on the night. I thought that Keon Ellis, as I already mentioned, was brilliant. 6 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, a block out there that I mentioned already. Great stuff out of him. Thomas Bryant, I thought played some pivotal minutes at points, especially in the first quarter where he drilled 2 triples. And I think that that one was very, very important to keep the Cavaliers from completely tanking in the first quarter. I think that without Evan Mobley out there, Kenny Atkinson has chosen to give Thomas more run. And this is a guy that the Cavaliers signed this past offseason with the thought in mind of being playable depth. Well, you have a reason to seriously lean on him now. And I hope that that continues because you need that size out there. Not necessarily the most profound performance from Craig Porter Jr., but I thought that he did a pretty good job of being a connective tissue out there. Craig is one of these guys that I think that when the rotation is entirely healthy, he probably doesn't touch the court often and maybe a situational play depending upon what's going on with Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis and others. But as of right now, I'm loving the fact that Kenny Atkinson is continuing to give him the runway to work on his diverse skill sets. And that's about it. I thought that you really, really got to see a good duration, or rather a good bulk of what the James Harden experience can be. And I think that Harden in Cleveland might look a little different than Harden in LA, considering the offensive talents that he will have beside him. Again, that is no disrespect to Kawhi Leonard. That is no disrespect to Zoo, who is in Indy now. That's no disrespect to anybody else on that LA roster. But I think there's a huge difference between who he was playing with there versus who he now has beside him here in Cleveland from an offensive talent perspective. Just my thoughts. But I think that you're going to see a James Harden that is probably going to look to play make more than he already was in LA. And yeah, he'll have scoring bursts. He'll have opportunities where, yeah, they're going to put the ball in his hands and ask him to score in isolation. And you saw that tonight, whether that be of the step back variety where he is one-on-one-ing guys at the point of attack and he's knocking down shots over him, or he is dribbling and driving right past you to get to the rim. And we all know that these are things that have always been within his wheelhouse, but it's a different thing entirely to see that with your very eyes for your team. One thing that I am curious to see is what the percentages end up looking like for the rest of the season, because he entered today among the 70th percentile, well, in the 70th percentile among guards in a rim field goal percentage at 66%. He has been pretty bad from the mid-range area from an efficiency standpoint. He is just in the 30th percentile there, 38% of his mid-range field goals. But he has buoyed that out with being able to get downhill and getting to the rim and getting the shots off there and drawing a ton of contact. Obviously, that leads to free throws, and he's top 6 there, and I don't expect that to change. Honestly, I don't think that the fact that he plays in Cleveland will take away from the ability to draw contact, maybe a slightly, but what I think is that he has learned how to sell the calls, and while you hate playing against that shit, people call it foul baiting. People call them foul merchants. There's a ton of them in the NBA, but it feels good to be on the right side of that for once and not necessarily have to worry about it defensively. All I know is that you're going to have to account for this gargantuan weapon now in wine and gold, because obviously Darius has been in and out of the lineup all season long, and James is one of these guys that's consistently been out there. So got to give him credit there. I do want to take this time though to give props to the Sacramento Kings, because that's a team that is in flux right now. That's a team that has a lot to figure out in terms of their future, because they left the deadline and they still got a ton of these guys that we thought were going to get shipped off. The Sabonis is still there. Zach LaVine is still there. DeMar DeRozan is still there. I mean, there's so many pieces. Malik Monk, right? I think there's a lot of these pieces that are still there that I think a lot of people expected to be moved. And that's a team that has to figure it out now. Probably going to have to wait until the offseason and start selling off on these pieces. And for the life of me, I just cannot understand the direction that they're going in. But I thank them a lot for having for having the goal to send Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder our way. Regardless on how you feel about these two players, I think that moving off of DeAndre Hunter's $23.3 million price tag, that's great for Cleveland. So Kenny Atkinson cooked in regards to that one. I'll open the chat up for now. Reef Gang says, love that he said post game that it's Don's team and he is just here to help Don quiet the doubters. I love that. I think, was it Travis Scott who ran up? I mean, that was some crazy shit. As Dino says, huge second half. JS 2767 says, kind of too close, slow start for Harden, but good second half. I really chalk that up as literally just James Harden trying to get a feel for his new teammates. I think that you saw him trying to force feed the ball to Jarrett Allen, and it was starting to work as longer the game went on, at least in the first half, right, in the third quarter. But what I think you saw in that fourth was James turn it on and start to knock down shots from range using that step back that we know that he is perfectly capable of. And I don't worry about that. Yeah, maybe a slower start than some people are envisioning, but I think he did exactly what I expected him to do. Let's see here. Chaz Erica says, Kenny finishing this game out with Sam after what he played. Woof. I can understand that. This was not a great Sam Merrill performance. He probably could have kept riding with Keon Ellis if he wanted to. D Jackson H1K says, was a close game. The Kings fought hard, but good second half by the Cavs, and Harden was clutch late in the fourth quarter. And having that next to Donovan Mitchell, who's already one of the more clutch players in the NBA, that's big. And I know that Harden doesn't always have the most reputation for being clutch in the postseason, but I mean, you can't lie to yourself. Watching him do what he did down the stretch of this game, that was pretty awesome. I mean, that triple that he hit to to quiet Sacktown, that was pretty damn awesome. That was pretty damn awesome to see. Nate 406 says vintage Westbrook game. Hey, yeah, shout out to Russell Westbrook, who honestly, I think a lot of people were wondering whether or not Russell Westbrook would be in the NBA this year after it looks like he was getting passed over for just about by just about every team out there. And lo and behold, Russell Westbrook is having a pretty damn solid season, all things considered. He came into tonight averaging 15.2 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 6.6 assists. Not necessarily efficient, but Russell Westbrook has never truly been that efficient. But he's completing 42.8% of his field goals. But where he is more efficient than he typically has ever been is from three-point distance, and you saw that tonight. He is shooting 34.4% from three-point range on this season, and he's just a career 30.8% shooter from range on the career, but 34%, that's pretty good for Russell Westbrook. And tonight, Russ made the Cavaliers pay for sagging off of him at times pretty often. Russ would finish 8 of 14 from the field, and he completed 5 of 10 from deep. And some of his biggest misses, including, I think, was it was either an air ball towards the end of the game or it didn't even touch the rim. And hit the backboard, was in the late stretches of the game when he was just trying to get the Kings to tie the game up. So for the better part of this game, he was very efficient. And you got to give him credit for that, because this is a player that I know is very mercurial and it can be divisive at times in terms of where do you think he's an impactful player still. And quite honestly with you, I'm happy that Russ is having this type of year that he's had, because he's showing that he still does have some utility out there. And I think that when it's all said and done, people are going to have to give him more respect than they actually do. Let's see here. Joe Slops says, it's weird rooting for Harden. Listen, it is. I think that it's surreal still to see James Harden in a Cleveland Cavalier jersey. And it probably will be for the rest of the season, at least for me. It's going to take some getting used to. And it's going to take the first time I see Darius Garland in Clippers jersey is going to be weird as hell too. I'll be honest. I'm going to be watching his debut with the Los Angeles Clippers. Nicotine 2977 says Jarrett Allen was eating good tonight, carried us the whole first half. I keep saying it, and I kept saying it during the game on social media. I think that for the rest of the season, you could easily see Jarrett Allen be a 20 and 12 guy. Will he get that? Probably not. I think once Evan Mobley comes back, you're probably going to see him be more 18 and 11. But I definitely, you guys understand what I'm saying. They will force feed the ball to James Harden in particular. And I don't have a problem with that. I think that so many people have gotten to this point with Jarrett Allen where they're just like, oh, he's a solid player, but we would rather have Evan Mobley at the 5. We want to play 5 out, yada, yada, et cetera, et cetera. Where I just draw the line on that, especially with James Harden not now being on the roster, knowing what his history is with elevating centers and bigs. No, Jarrett Allen's become even more important, especially without having as much size on your roster. Gotta understand it. Cavalier says James Harden and Donovan Mitchell combined for 32 points in the fourth quarter. Yes, you don't always want that to be the case. You don't always want to have to rely on those two, but it's good to know that you have two premier offensive talents and scorers working for you in clutch situations. I love to see it. Absolutely love to see it. So many comments here. J-Bone 1800 says, we know Strus will garner minutes once he returns, but someone else is going to lose minutes. Yes. The Cavaliers, if you didn't hear this already, I pointed this out. They're like extremely high in depth in the guard rotation. And some guys, and Strus, he can play the 3. Obviously, he's done the bulk of that for the Cavaliers, but he's one of these guys that's versatile enough to play the 2 and the 3. And to believe it or not, Miami actually deployed him at times as the 4, at least defensively speaking. So I don't know who's going to lose minutes. I would assume that Craig Porter Jr. is an automatic out in terms of the rotation once these guys do get healthy. But in Tyrese Proctor, he's not even a thought in that area. But Donovan, James, Dennis, Sam, Max, Jalen, and Keon, that's a lot to try and figure out. Some of these guys play the 2, some play the 1 exclusively, some will play the 3. I don't know who will lose minutes. But I do think that it might be a cumulative thing. I think that maybe Kenny Atkinson pulls minutes from everybody to get a role for Max Strus. I don't think it would necessarily cut anybody else outside of Craig from the rotation, to be honest. So I really don't know. And maybe they'll go the game and situationally dependent. Maybe they'll see in a specific game that they're going to need more minutes in the front court, like at the 4. I don't know. I mean, because you have to factor Dean Wade into this equation too, and Naquan Tomlin at points too. There's a lot of questions to be answered, and that's a Kenny Atkinson problem, but I am interested to see what they end up doing. Tofurk says, but I am not about to worry about New York at the moment. Who knows if they can even make it? I'm guessing that's in reference to somebody else in the chat. But yeah, I think that there are teams in the Eastern Conference that can pose a threat to the Cavaliers based on the size. Obviously you have Mitchell Robinson over there and company. But I'm not all that worried about that, to be honest with you right now. We're going to have to see what the seeding looks like. And for all intents and purposes, Cleveland is going to continue moving up the standings in the East, right? They are now 32 and 21. That is the 4th seed in the East as of recording this. They've won 8 of their last 10, and they're winners of 3 straight now after tonight's victory. And I think that considering there's not a large window, or rather gap, between the 2nd seed and the 4th seed right now, they're going to keep moving up. Detroit, I don't think they're uncatchable. I think that you can get them. They're 38 and 13 right now, getting ready to head into the break, but that's 32 and 21 in 7 games back. It would take a lot. It would take a huge slump from Detroit and a huge win streak from Cleveland to even tie them up. So I think it's probably more realistic to count on the 2nd seed to be the top end for them. And I think that's certainly doable, considering there's only a 2.5 game gap between Boston, who is the 2nd seed right now, and Cleveland, who is at 4 right? So we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But I think I want to see what the seeding looks like by the end of the season. Warren Smith says, DeAndre who? Man, I feel bad for DeAndre Hunter because he has had such a rough season. I understand that he has had a rough season from a statistical standpoint, but now we're talking about like injuries that are so just off-putting, right? Eye iritis, that's a crazy designation. That is a crazy designation for an injury. That I don't know if you guys saw the pictures from that, but he was bleeding from the eye socket essentially. It's pretty bad. Hopefully he's okay, but yeah, he's had such a rough season. It's DZ said, new Cavs watcher coming from LAC. Cavs role players seem to like to take more difficult contested shots, acrobatic layups, etc. tonight than than the Clippers usually did. Was that an outlier or is that the norm? To be honest with you, I don't think that's the norm. I think that you have come to know that guys like Jalen Tyson have been extremely effective catch and shooters, very, very good off the ball. I think that Craig Porter Jr. takes a lot of contested layups in the mid range, maybe, but I don't think you'll see a ton of contested shots. They do track these things, and I'll get back to you on what that looks like from a statistical standpoint. But I don't think that's necessarily the norm. Donovan Mitchell obviously takes a lot of contested shots, especially at the rim. But from the role players in particular, you're not seeing that. I think that you do see acrobatic and dynamic plays from Naquan Tomlin, who has been one of the best offensive rebounding forwards in such a short span. You have seen Jalen Tyson do much the same. Craig Porter Jr. does that at times, but I don't think you really see a lot of that going on. I think they get some open looks. Let's see here. J67NGC5 says, seems bench kept our revs up even without Tyson showing up. Agreed completely. I think that you're going to need to lean on your bench at times as Kenny tries to figure out who fits best in which rotations. Let's see. If Like Expo says, also, mighty Detroit lost to the Wizards with Cade playing before Knicks. Just saying. Some act like Detroit would just clear us. Respect them, but people's Detroit prediction is getting out of hand right now, in my opinion. I'm not. What I will say about Detroit is this. 7-game series, I'm taking the Cavaliers. But I think regular season right now, considering how far they are ahead, while I don't think it's impossible for Cleveland to catch up, I do think that there's multiple things that have to occur. Obviously, Detroit has to completely shit themselves down in the second half of the season, and Cleveland has to take off like crazy to even catch them. Not to pull ahead, but to just catch them. So it's not impossible, but it's an uphill battle. But in a 7-game series, yeah, I'm taking Cleveland, especially with who they got right now. Definitely some very interesting matchups with Jalen Duren and Jarrett Allen and Cade and company. I think that the size that they have over there, that's especially considering guys like Isaiah Stewart and Tobias Harris. And I mean, you get what I'm trying to say. Asor, there's a lot over there from a matchup standpoint that might get interesting, but I'm not worried. In the 7-game series, I do think Cleveland could beat them, but we're so far out, I'm not going to worry about it. Cavalier says, the lack of size was evident tonight. Going to need Wade healthy and hitting his shots for the playoffs. And this right here, this is why I'm saying to people who want to trade Dean Wade, listen, I understand that Dean Wade is inconsistent as hell. I understand that Dean Wade is not as healthy as you wish. But Dean Wade's significance to this team skyrocketed once they traded DeAndre Hunter. It just did, because you don't have a lot of front court depth, especially that can defend. It's tough. Larry Nance Jr., my guy, probably not needing to be counted on all that long. And you can play him for short stretches, but you don't necessarily want to be relying on Larry long term, especially in the playoff setting. Thomas Bryant is really relegated to a backup 5 position. He cannot play the 4. You don't want to play him at the 4. You just don't. You have a lot of guard depth. You have very little guard. You have very little front court depth as it relates to the four in particular. And I mean, like, if you want to term it 3-4, sure, but they're good at the five between Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, and Thomas Bryant. But they have some problems in the in between. So they got some shit to sort out. But what I'm trying to say here is that Dean Wade's importance became so valuable because you can't ask Naquan Tomlin to cover all of these huge pieces defensively. He is getting better at the point of attack, but to me, I just don't think that you're going to want to rely on Naquan to be this hugely dependable piece. That's just unfair to Tomlin. I think he deserves a bigger role. I think he deserves a standardized contract, but that's asking a lot. So, yeah, you're asking Dean Wade to provide a lot, and that's why he becomes increasingly important after this. And I'm a Dean Wade guy. I think that at $6.6 million, you're not going to find a player who impacts the game at the level that he does. Percentages be damned. That's just where I'm at with Dean Wade. Jazz Erka says, yeah, Mobley may have to play more four. Nate 406 says, Kenny's offensive scheme, motion flow is built on having a ton of ball handlers on the court at the same time. So I don't think the abundance of guards is negative. It's definitely not a negative, but the lack of abundance in regards to size particular could be. There will be specific matchups where that size discrepancy is going to hurt like a motherfucker. Like it is what it is. It is what it is. He also says you can go zone to negate the size disadvantage and keep them on the perimeter. You can, but that will not always work. Teams can and will adjust to the zone defense. Rod No says Naquan is way too volatile on an asset to depend on him this year. He's a young Vergel. I like that comparison. Obviously, from an energy standpoint, Anderson Vergel in his younger days, and he's another guy just like Dean who consistently was in and out of the rotation because of injuries. He was a spark plug from a defensive standpoint, from not only defense, from an energy standpoint. Don't get me wrong. He was a pretty damn good defender in his prime. That's why I made second team all defense back in the day, for those of you who remember. But I think that from an energy standpoint, that's a very good comparison. I do like that one. Different types of players, but energy, it matters. It does. Todd Trout says, so glad that bum DeAndre Hunter is gone. That is a key trade. Ellis and Schroeder are both better than that cancer. I think that's taking it a little too far. I mean, I'll say this about DeAndre Hunter. You make that trade 100 times out of 100 times, considering what the Cavaliers had given up to acquire DeAndre Hunter. It's Karis LeVert, George Niang, and a pick. Like that's a great trade at that time, considering the season that he was having for Atlanta. This has just been the season from hell for DeAndre Hunter. And I think that the Cavaliers recognize that him making $23.3 million, it was never going to be a long-term thing. And you had to decide whether or not it was worth holding on to him for the remainder of the season or to reallocate that salary to other areas of need on the roster. And I think they decided to do that in Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder and getting true point of attack defense that they had been missing since Isaac Okoro departed, and dribble penetration and somebody could put pressure on the rim in Dennis Schroeder. So big time stuff. Dr. Claw 77, what's up, Claw? Says, forget Hunter. Schroeder Ellis is the Lonzo replacement. That's also very good way to view things. I think that Schroeder in particular, everybody's going to point to him being the ball handler and the driver that we were hoping Lonzo could be, even though that's not really Lonzo's game. For those of you who never really looked at the numbers, Lonzo never drove the ball more than 387 total times in any single season. It's never truly a big part of the game, but we were all hoping that he would do it more consistently. I think he only drove 52 times during his entire Cleveland tenure, and he only made 4 field goals off of those drives. Absolutely crazy to me. But from the point of attack standpoint and the defensive playmaking, that's what you're getting in Keon Ellis. So these two guys together, that's the best of both worlds. Although you're going to have to figure out how to divvy up those minutes. But what I will say is this: with Dennis being a better point of attack defender than most people give him credit for, you got a lot. I mean, you got a lot. So Kenny is going to have to figure out where to redistribute these minutes at as the season goes on. But I love it, man. I love having these guys. And I know that Ellis is going to be a restricted free agent. He's on an expiring deal. They're going to have to work out a contract extension for him pretty soon. And Dennis's salary may not necessarily be the most the best for right now, but that's a solid ass piece to have for the remainder of the season. And maybe they move him in the offseason. Maybe they elect to hold on to him for another year. But I love having both of these guys because what they bring to the table individually and collectively should translate to a postseason setting, especially more than Lonzo is currently tracking to. And speaking of Lonzo, there's a lot of teams that have interest in Zoe for some reason right now. I think the Warriors have been connected to him. LA, the Lakers have been connected to him. There are a couple of different teams that are vying for his services, but we'll end up seeing what happens with Lonzo. I do wish him the best. Just didn't work out here. Chaz Erica says Ty scored more in one game than Zoe scored in a month. It is how it is, man. Ty's clearly the superior player, but I still think Cavaliers having Dennis and Keon is better than having Ty Jerome. Just my opinion. I would still love to have Ty, but if you understand what I'm trying to say, like the offensive production that you're getting out of the combination of Keon and Dennis combined with the point of attack defense you're getting from both of these guys makes more sense to me from a postseason setting. Isaac on YouTube says, imagine how good of a position financially we'd be in if Mobley had not gotten the Defensive Player of the Year award. Yeah, the salary bump that guys get from a contractual standpoint is just fucking crazy when they win one of these awards. I hate it. It works against teams because it feels like you're penalizing the team for a guy making a prestigious being given an award. You understand what I'm saying? It sucks, but I would gladly I would gladly have that award be given to Mobley all over again. Damn the money. Mark Harris says, or M. Harris says, some of those Harden passes to Allen were insane. Yes, they were. You saw a lot of pocket passes where only Allen could get them. You saw a lot of that going on. It's not, you hit Jalen Tyson with one of those tonight too. That was really nice. If Flexbook says NBA is cheap, Nicotine says he would have gotten it anyway because he was all NBA. Yeah, I mean, all NBA and defensive player. You got, my point is like, it's almost like penalizing teams because one of their players has a contractual clause that if they get to XYZ points, meaning if they win an award or if they hit this specific part of their contract, then you're going to be penalized for it. It sucks, but you get it. Jonah Quest says Tuesday is 2 weeks for Evan being out, right? Yeah, I think so. When I had my reactionary video to that, when I looked at the schedule, I think the game that I had circled for, okay, maybe he'll be back for is Denver on Monday. I didn't think he would take the full time frame, the full 2 weeks for Washington, which is the Wednesday game before the deadline, but we'll see. I'm trying to be optimistic because Mobley has been one of these guys who has traditionally come back faster than timetables. But I think we're in a spot right now where it might just behoove the Cavaliers to let him sit until the second half of the season starts. Let me know how you feel about that in the comments below. Do you think that we should let Mobley sit until after the All-Star break? Because to me, I think I would sit him. I think I would continue to keep him off or out of the lineup for right now. It's just where I am at where this whole situation, as far as this whole situation is concerned. Let me know in the comments below. I think that's a good stopping point for tonight, though. If you guys are still here by chance, there's over 1,300 of you in here. Do your boy a favor. Hit that like button over on YouTube. Subscribe to the Cavalier podcast if you're not yet a subscriber. Do the same thing, please, for the Positive Hooper channel. I'm trying to release more and more content over there. more NBA and general stuff, not necessarily Cavalier specific. If you want to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you want to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review. There's a ton of people that listen to this show that stream this that don't do that. I appreciate feedback, whether that's negative or positive. It's all very, very helpful to me creating a better viewing experience for y'all. If you want to do that, leave that rating, leave that review, send me a screenshot of that to it's cavalier53@gmail.com, and I will send you said invite. If you want to support the show in a small but helpful way, consider becoming a member either on YouTube for as little as $1 or Patreon for the same price. All that said, go Cavs.